The Occoquan Radio Podcast is a private production and is not affiliated with the town of Occoquan. Opinions expressed on the podcast are solely those of its host and guests. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June 29th, 2025 episode of the Occoquan Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Ernie Porta, bringing you 10 to 15 minutes of irregular, unscheduled updates on things Occoquan and beyond. This episode will discuss the retirement of a town staff member, the aftermath of Hurricane Agnes in Occoquan, a myth about baby names, and close by reviewing upcoming activities in town. Make sure you don't miss an episode by searching for us on the podcasting app of your choice and hitting the subscribe button. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode of the Occoquan Radio Podcast. Last week was bittersweet in Occoquan as we held a retirement gathering for our events director, Julie Little, who has been with us here in town for some 8 years. As many of you know, Julie excelled in the planning and execution of the town's long-standing historic marquee events, the Fall Arts and Crafts Show and the Spring Riverfest and Crafts Show, elevating their quality and making innovative additions like conservation and imagination alleys. But Julie did far more than the fall and spring shows. She championed and implemented numerous initiatives to enhance the quality of life for residents and bring new vibrancy to the downtown district, including by creating events like Trivia Night in Rivermill Park, Music on Mill, Spirits and Spirits, and the Holiday Artisan Market. She also played an integral role in activities like public art installations, memorial donations, facilities rentals, ribbon cuttings, marketing efforts, and the initiation of the town's Main Street program. These are but a sampling of the things Miss Little did, and did so very well. Her passion, knowledge, skill, and good humor have earned her the respect and gratitude of all of us, and I will miss her greatly. Julie promises not to be a stranger in her retirement, so we hope to see her around soon again, and she still puts together the questions for Trivia Night in Rivermill Park. In the meantime, she's also taken on a new challenge. She is now a voice actor who does voiceovers and is the reader on audiobooks. So you'll have a chance to hear her voice, even if you don't see her. Thanks for everything, Julie, and we hope to both hear and see you soon. This weekend, we also welcomed a new business to town with a ribbon cutting. Laura Jones Art Gallery, located at 125 Mill Street in Unit 10, which is on the second floor of the building adjacent to Madigan's Waterfront Restaurant and across from the Mill Street Draft Garden. Stop by if you can to say hello and look at the artwork on display. Also on Sunday, some folks visited Leaf and Petal on Washington Street for the anniversary of our dedication last year of Ogle Harris Way in Occoquan. If you haven't had a chance yet to visit Leaf and Petal's new location, I encourage you to do so. In our last episode, we discussed the coming of Hurricane Agnes to Occoquan on June 21st and 22nd, 1972. This week, we'll briefly review the aftermath. Despite the danger posed by the threat of a dam break, on June 23rd, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers determined that the dam was no longer under threat, if it ever had been. Now a different kind of problem with water emerged: water to drink. Agnes-induced floodwaters had knocked out the water filtration plants on either side of the Occoquan River, one of which stood where Rivermill Park is today, as well as the 36-inch water main that crossed the river and supplied eastern Prince William County. This created a water crisis in multiple areas of northern Virginia, who relied on water from the Occoquan Reservoir to fill their pipes. At the smaller plant where Rivermill Park is today, the floodwaters left a pump intact but inoperable. Firefighters worked to pump an estimated 360,000 gallons of water out of the building's equipment. Thanks to the efforts of firefighters and water personnel, some of whom had worked almost around the clock since June 21st, the smaller plant began to pump out modest amounts of water again on June 24th. The devastation in Occoquan's main streets was substantial. County Supervisor Vernon Dawson, who owned a restaurant, part of a funeral home, and another building that he was renovating on the town's main street, saw all three suffer serious damage or be washed away. Asked what he planned to do as he helped direct volunteers, Dawson was unsure, but reportedly smiled and responded, "Just say I'm at the 10-yard line and going to punt." Volunteers were a critical component of the cleanup effort in Occoquan. Among the earliest were the members of VFW Post 7916 and the post's Ladies Auxiliary. On the morning of June 22nd, they assisted in directing traffic and helping with salvage. The next day, they set up a small canteen offering coffee and donuts to the members of the National Guard, the U.S. Army, and other service members who began arriving. On Saturday, June 25th, the Salvation Army arrived to assist, but observing the VFW in action, asked the post's commander, Ed Bedron, if he would be willing to continue the work so the Salvation Army could help others elsewhere. The post commander agreed. Another officer of the post, Don Topman, arranged for food donations of sandwiches, soup, and the like that the post then made available to everyone. Other volunteers also assisted in Occoquan. Boy Scouts Explorer First Aid Post 1364 helped with sheltering the refugees at the Botts Fire Station, and then with the town cleanup. Then, in response to the request of the president of the nearby Civic Association in Lake Ridge, a community with whom relations had been strained as town residents attributed an increase in stream flash flooding with development in that area, somewhere between 70 and 100 members of that community strode into town to help with the cleanup. Agnes largely took the fight out of those in Occoquan who had successfully opposed replacing the old one-lane bridge that brought Route 123 through town where the footbridge is today. Now that the 94-year-old bridge was gone, there was little point in opposing the state's desire to build a new one where it sits today. Divers from Fort Belvoir searched for the wreckage of the old bridge to ensure it didn't hamper navigation. Some of what they found remains today with the Occoquan Historical Society. Never found, however, was the plaque the Historical Society had placed on the bridge. Now there was concern that if a new bridge was not constructed quickly enough, the town businesses would all fail. By the middle of August, state officials had responded by putting up a temporary H-10 Army bridge where the footbridge is today, until the new bridge at the eastern end of town could be built. A year later, most of the businesses in Occoquan that had received federal assistance after Agnes were operating at pre-flood levels. One exception was the Colonial Funeral Home, out of which some 30 caskets had allegedly escaped during Agnes, floating into the river and through the streets of town. The funeral home had not yet tried to reopen. All that had survived was a hearse driven to higher ground. In the meantime, the new bridge was about half finished, so the temporary H-10 Army Bridge continued to bring Route 123 through the heart of the town of Occoquan for a little bit longer. One Agnes side note is that damage in our area sometimes did not reveal itself until later. In fact, it was due to damage caused by Agnes that on July 19, 1972, almost a month after the flood, the northbound span of the Route 1 bridge unexpectedly and abruptly collapsed. The closure of both spans for inspection created what was described then as the worst traffic jam ever to hit the region. Again, if you're interested in seeing photographs of the arrival of Agnes in Occoquan, visit the Occoquan Historical Society's Millhouse Museum at 413 Mill Street. For more information on the Historical Society itself, visit www.occoquanhistoricalsociety.org. And for more on Agnes, check out my book Hurricane Agnes in Virginia, published by the History Press last year, which you can find in town, at Barnes & Noble, on Amazon, and at your local library, among other locations. That's the intro sound for our Rumor Mill Shredder segment. This is where we pay homage to the fact that while for much of its history Occoquan was a prosperous mill town, the only mill in operation today is the Rumor Mill. Here we take on urban legends, myths, rumors, or other similar topics that need straightening out. While there are plenty of Hurricane Agnes myths to debunk, I'm going to give you a break from that and instead go far afield to something interesting I found elsewhere. Our names are important to us, or I think many of us believe that to be the case. If you're like me, however, you probably thought that you could choose any name you like. It turns out that's not the case, according to USA Today report, drawing on information from U.S. birth certificates, a privately owned website that helps people get birth certificates. Some countries apparently ban types of names, while others ban specific names. Japan, for example, bans what are known as shiny or glittery names, which are apparently names with unusual pronunciations. Sweden once banned the name Metallica. I say once banned because a little research reveals that the company U.S. birth certificate's information may be a little out of date, since that particular ban appears to have been challenged in court and the Swedish government eventually relented. In the United States, restrictions vary from state to state. According to U.S. birth certificates, names that have been deemed illegal to select in the U.S. include both Adolf Hitler and Jesus Christ. Also supposedly banned is Santa Claus. Other less specific monikers are also apparently out. Among them, King, Queen, Majesty, and Messiah. For my part, I'll stick with Ernie, spelled in my case E-A-R-N-I-E, like the boxer, the running back, and my dad. There aren't a lot of events in town this week with July 4th in the offing. For the 4th, there are a host of fireworks displays in our region, and I encourage folks to check out the town's monthly printed newsletter, also available online on the town website, for a list of some of those. On the 5th, Earth Addictions in town will hold a Gather, Ground, and Grow event at 7:30 p.m. I also want to acknowledge that a couple weeks ago the country celebrated the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, and on June 27th, our very own VFW Post 7916 celebrated its 79th anniversary. Congratulations to Post 7916, and thank you again for continuing to be an integral part of our community. Next episode, we'll talk about some of our town businesses who recently won Inside Nova's Best of Prince William Awards. In the meantime, everyone please enjoy the July 4th holiday and be safe. That brings us to the end of this episode of the Occoquan Radio Podcast. Make sure you don't miss an episode by searching for us on the podcasting app of your choice and hitting the subscribe button. I'm your host, Ernie, that's E-A-R-N-I-E, Porta. Thank you for listening.